Houston, say again, please.
Houston, we've had a problem.
Hey there folks, welcome you all to this E3 vlog of mine, one of three I think well, we'll see. I'm going to do it in bite-sized chunks. The EA one was yesterday. It was all alone and stood by itself. Nobody else did one yesterday. We've got Microsoft in a couple of hours. It's about 4 o'clock here in the UK. And Microsoft kick-off theirs, I think, 6 o'clock in the UK, something like that, which is in the morning, I think, or around lunchtime in the US, depending on where you are. And then after Microsoft later on, a stupid time of the morning, which I won't be watching live, I think it's about 2 AM, you'll then get the Bethesda conference, of which they'll have loads to announce. And then tomorrow, I don't know what's first actually, tomorrow, and then there's something, and then there is Sony. Ubisoft before Sony, I think. So Ubisoft tomorrow, and then Sony again at like Tuesday 2 AM, but in America it'll be Monday evening or Monday night. So I don't know when I'll be able to. I'll definitely do something on the Microsoft and PlayStation things, I think. We'll see what Bethesda and Ubisoft come out with as to whether or not I decide to do something with them, or I might just throw them in with the other two, or I might just do the rest of it as a big one thing. But I'd like to break it up into chunks as I hear about it, just so the stuff sticks in my brain. So let's get to it, people. EA is kind of a given that they're going to do all their usual stuff, FIFA, Madden, all the sports stuff. So there's nothing really overly exciting there for me. They're going to get the same people buying those games year in, year out. New kids growing up and stuff will start buying them. That, you know, they're into sports and stuff. Doesn't really matter that much what they do with the engines and the story and the blah. It just keeps those sorts of people happy that like playing those games. I used to be someone that would play FIFA every year, or Pro Evolution Soccer every year, one or the other, depending on which one was sort of the better at the time. But since my gaming got, I don't know, my gaming philosophy changed. I got more into story-driven games, more into, you know, just in general, got more into something that wasn't sports. So, you know, it was a long, long time ago, but I used to love playing the football games, certainly. And, you know, maybe a time will come when I get back to it. But I don't know. I think, generally speaking, I just find that most footballers are just arrogant, overpaid knobs. And I find it very hard to get excited when playing with them on a computer game. I think that's maybe where I'm coming. I'm an old cynic, people, I tell you. So anyway, so they kicked off things with Battlefield 5. We're not sure why it's called Battlefield 5 when the last one they did was Battlefield 1. It could be simply because, I'd have to check on this, but it could be that I'm pretty sure there was a Battlefield 3 and a Battlefield 4. And most likely was a Battlefield 2 already, but they'd never called anything Battlefield 1. So I think it was a way of them saying we're doing World War 2, World War 1, World War 2 again, or whatever it was, and also, you know, instead of a more modern fighting. And Battlefield 5 just kind of leads on from that, and it's still about World War 2, but because they've already got a 2, 3 and 4, they've just decided to call it 5. I think that's why they've done it. It's just so that people don't get confused about the old games and the new one, that's all. So I don't know why so many people are walking around scratching their heads as to why it's called 5. I think that's as simple as that. I think it just didn't want confusion with older titles that are already released with the same name. That's all, people. So they started off with Battlefield 5. Look, it's not my kind of game, because it's obviously based around there will be a campaign with it, I'm sure, but it's really a multiplayer type game. I just don't play those sorts of games. Looks fantastic. It's World War 2 again, by the looks of it. I will try and find some footage of these things to go up behind me while I'm chatting away. I'm not going to spend too long talking about these titles, because we don't really get given that much at these conferences anyway. The biggest thing they kind of talked about was, obviously at the moment there's this huge PUBG, Fortnite thing going on, Battle Royale things that people are really into. 100 people dropped on a map, and, you know, last one that's alive wins. Very, very popular, and they are saying that they are going to put that in Battlefield 5's multiplayer. However, a lot of people didn't pick up on the fact that they said, oh, but that's later on down the line. So how quickly that comes will be interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, I think they were determined to make it so that all the new elements of tanks crashing into buildings, and, you know, you can't just sit in a building and snipe anymore, because a tank can actually bring the building down while you're sat in it, all this sort of stuff. They want all that in the Battle Royale as well. I'm pretty sure they called it Battlefield Royale, not Battle Royale, because Battle Royale, I don't know if that can be actually, you know, held on to PUBG as a thing. You know, PUBG, I think, are taking Fortnite to court, aren't they? Because they feel like they've stolen their Battle Royale thing and made it their own. Pretty sure Battle Royale was a thing before before PUBG used it. But anyway, so they were very careful about not calling it Battle Royale. They just called it Royale Mode. But it's the same damn thing, people, you know. So they moved on from that. There was the most interesting thing for me, outside of Anthem, which we'll get to in a minute, was Andrea Renee, is it? The girl from What's Good Games. She hosted it for them to a greater degree, and also did a sort of a chat with some of the designers of Anthem at the end. But in the midst of it all happening, she went into the crowd and sat with a chap from the Respawn studio, and I think there'd been some rumours leaked. I hadn't heard them, but he officially announced while sat in a chair in the audience, so it was nothing major. They're clearly not ready to show anything off yet, and they clearly want the emphasis on Anthem at the minute anyway, that they have a story-driven Star Wars game coming, which everybody's been waiting for, because not everybody wants to play a multiplayer Battlefront game. And they are working on a game called Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and it is set between the Episode 3 and Episode 4, when all the Jedis are being hunted down and killed. Now, this kind of smells a little bit of the game that we got. I'm going to have a massive mind blank now. But I've done a couple of Let's Plays on them and stopped doing them because it kept getting copyrighted for all the Star Wars music. But the Star Wars games that we got on Xbox 360 and PS3, where you were playing sort of this underling of Darth Vader, and I think in the second one you're then a clone of the same character. The second one wasn't very good, but the first one was quite that. I mean, he was sending you off to hunt down the Jedi and kill them off. So I'll be very curious as to what they've done with this. I would suspect, because that's already been done, that they didn't see. Everybody assumed that you were going to be playing a Jedi, because she said to the guy, "Can I hold a lightsaber in this game?" And he said, "Absolutely." He didn't say you were a Jedi, though. He just said you would hold a lightsaber, and everybody assumed that meant you were playing as a Jedi. I think that assumption, though, may be correct, because we've already had a game like that, where you're hunting the Jedis down. I think it would be a bit much to do this exactly the same kind of thing again. So to be a Jedi, sort of running from that, or trying to help the other Jedi, maybe. But as we know in the Star Wars story, well, and what they did with the last film, The Last Jedi, don't get me started, I'm not quite sure how that story is ever going to end well, because we don't know of any other Jedis that lasted. Well, I suppose Kenobi did, didn't he? So Kenobi lasted until a point. Well, no, yeah, because it's between 3 and 4, so it can't be Kenobi, can it? So it has to be. I'm getting very confused now, people, about my timelines. Yeah, A New Hope. Yeah, so Kenobi could be in it, yeah. Because we're talking about when Vader's just become Vader and they're killing off all the Jedi, yeah. So I'm having a complete Star Wars mind blank there, people. So yeah, so before we go into Luke's story, it's the bit where they're sort of wiping out all the Jedi. And at that point, the only Jedis that we kind of know are still kicking around when it comes round to Luke is Yoda, who's in hiding, and Ben Kenobi, who is there, you know, they're watching over him, as it were. And does that mean then that maybe we're going to see a Kenobi story? Didn't say, but it was interesting to hear the guy. He wasn't giving much away at all, but he did say that they had had meetings with Lucas Games, I assume, and they've obviously got, because we know that the Battlefront deal with Lucasfilm or Lucas Games or whatever it is, it runs out in a couple of years. So, and they didn't spend a lot of time on Battlefront in this particular conference. So you wonder whether they're just sort of starting to say, right, we're going to give you as much as we can in the next couple of years, and that'll be that. Whether there'll even be a Battlefront 3 will be interesting to see. I suppose if you've only got a couple of years left on the contract, it would be worth their while to try and push a third one out. But they've done that much of the universe in the films now that you think, well, what's left for them to do? So yeah, so I was delighted to hear that. The interesting part for me is how Respawn, obviously, we know them for making Titanfall 1 and 2. They are kind of, well, obviously renowned for doing first-person games, so I'm not sure how a first-person lightsaber game would work. So you've got to assume that you're going to be getting a third-person game. So, not sure. I mean, I've not played Battlefront, and I know you can play with a lightsaber and that, but you can go into third-person mode in that, can't you? So, not overly sure. It's going to be really interesting to see what they've come up with. It's also going to be interesting to see just how long this game's in development, because it has been in development, because he said it will be playable next fall, autumn, in this land. So, holiday next year, we're going to be playing this game, and that is a really quick turnaround. So, for me, if you're building a game from scratch, you're looking at least 4 years, aren't you, development in this day and age, I think, which means either they've been working on it for a long time and we've not known about it, or they're doing a really quick turnaround. I hope it's the first of those two, because a really quick turnaround game doesn't sound overly great, does it? But you know, so I've actually installed Titanfall 2 to play. So many people have told me how good that campaign is. It's a really short campaign, but it's really good, really strong story. And people who've played it have said they've really loved it. And of course, the first one didn't have a campaign. It was sort of just built into the multiplayer of it, and you had to sort of just hear what was going on to do with the world you were in. So I'm looking forward more to playing Titanfall 2 now that I've got this new because hopefully it will fill me with joy that they're going to come up with a cracking story for us to play in the Star Wars universe. So that was the best news that came out of this for me, outside of obviously wanting to know more about Anthem. So it was literally, I've talked, you know, 5-10 minutes there about it. She literally spoke to this guy for 2 minutes, sat in a chair in the audience. So we didn't get to see any footage. We didn't get to see any anything at all other than him sat in this chair saying, yes, we are. And I think it was literally because all the leaks were starting to fall out saying this game was coming. So they wanted to come out and say, yep, we're working on it, get excited, and we'll tell you more next year. Maybe they could. Well, he said specifically, we're not ready with anything to show you yet. So, I mean, a year and a bit from release, you think that if they've been working on it a while, you think they would have something that was ready just to, you know, as a launch trailer at least, or something, at that stage in the game. Because, I mean, the last year of game development's really about getting it fully tested, you know, getting it out there, playing it as many testers as you can, getting feedback, looking for bugs, you know, that in itself can be a year's worth of work. So it was interesting. I think it's probably more to do with the fact they want a massive emphasis on Anthem, and they didn't want to take away from what's happening with Battlefield, because Battlefront, because much as they didn't spend much time on Battlefront, they've obviously got they've just done the Ewoks thing, which is really popular apparently, and they're now bringing in Obi-Wan Kenobi, Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, all that from, you know, and characters from those first 3 films that haven't been playable or in the game yet. So there's other things going on, and I think to actually push that a year and a half in people's faces now would have been, I think it would have taken the shine off a lot of other stuff they're trying to get people interested in. So I kind of get it, you know, but I'm just hoping it's something that's not being rushed out, because if they build something really good story-wise, we could get a trilogy of these things rather than just a one-off that wasn't great, you know. So anyway, we'll see. But I'm uber stoked about it, because I was really gutted when the woman from Naughty Dog, Amy Hennig, was in charge of with Visceral, that all got shut down, and you know, it was really gutting to hear it, because I was really looking forward to it. So it's nice to know that there's a Star Wars game on the way. They then talked about Battlefront 2 and Clone Wars stuff is coming this year into Battlefront 2 as DLC, and that's where the Ben Kenobi and the Anakin Skywalker playables and all that were coming in, Count Dooku and all that. So people at Battlefront were quite stoked about that. To be honest, I've had one shot on Battlefront 1, and it was fine, but I'm just not a multiplayer player, so, you know, give me a campaign. I was tempted with Battlefront 2, but then people told me the campaign was average and too short to justify buying it just for the campaign, so I didn't bother with Battlefront 2 either. Why are those titles so similar, people? Battlefront. Unravel 2 not only was announced, but also launched on stage, so that is now downloadable and playable. I haven't played Unravel 1. It's supposed to be a beautiful, wonderful game to play. I may well get around to playing that and then jumping into the second one. The second one is co-op, so you can both, well, it's single player or co-op, but if you play it single player, you're still playing with the second little character on screen. It's just the AI working with you rather than a person. So they've brought the co-op to it just to give it that extra dynamic. It was a multi-award winning game, that. So, you know, the guy was on stage again and he was really chuffed with it and got quite emotional at the end, thanking folk for letting them do a second one and the love that it's received. Yes, that was that for that. Out now, downloadable, people. And then we went on to another indie type game. They've got a few, I can't remember what it's called now. EA, I didn't write it down, but it's a name they give their indie stuff. And there was a company called Jedi Games that came on, a woman who had written this story and this game and this concept. And she was proper emotional when she came on. She sold it really, really well. And the game is effectively... I can see a lot more of this coming in games. And it kind of hit us with Hellblade because it was all about mental health. And this particular game is all about loneliness. And she wrote it when she was in a really lonely place. And just wrote the whole concept of the game around how dark she became. Felt like this sort of monster rather than a person because of this sort of isolation. So the whole game is built around this person that's been alone for too long and has turned into this sort of monster, and going on this journey to find or to not be lonely anymore and have this monster turn back into a person. And it all, you know, it was beautifully sold on stage. The graphics that were shown and the gameplay looked gorgeous. Didn't give an awful lot away about what you'll be doing in this world, sort of puzzles or whatever. But it did have a very strong, for me, had a very strong Brothers Tale of Two Sons sort of vibe to it. You know, it's going to be very story driven, but you'll have little things to do with this character. It looked gorgeous, you know. So I'll be very interested to see that game when it comes out. I may well give that a go. I think loneliness is, as she said, it's something that touches everybody at some point, I think. So yeah, it was really, really nice to see that punted on stage, especially from a big company like EA looking at and bringing in smaller devs like that. So yeah, that was really, really interesting to see. And that was on the tape. That was straight off the back of seeing Unravel, I think, if I remember rightly. Unravel 2, as it were. So they then moved on to Madden. There was a god-awful thing, you know. I mean, I don't even know who the guy was. He was obviously a black footballer guy, American footballer, I assume. Or whether he was another EA guy, sort of esports person, I don't know, but I think I was meant to know who he was, but I didn't. And he came on with this guy who'd won the Madden esport thing, and they just stood on stage and talked about, you know, it was awful. It was like, just don't, like, nobody is interested in the winner of esports coming onto your conference. Like, people are there to see what your products, what products you've got coming, how, you know, what you've done to change the new versions of them or whatever, right? I mean, it's bad enough that we have to sit through the sport games every year. I mean, we get that's what you do it well enough, and you're going to come on every year and you're going to tell us you've made it even better than the one before. And that's all we need to know. We don't need to know about this young guy that's won, chasing the money, winning titles and what have you. Nobody cares. Like, you know what I mean? I'm sure he's a perfectly nice lad, but I don't care about the fact he won an esports competition. I'm there to see what you've got to offer me in the world of gaming. God's sakes, people. I'm not the only person that's saying this. I think everyone on the planet was like, why? Why? It was like the most cringeworthy 5 minutes I've ever sat through in my whole life. I mean, even the two of them look bloody uncomfortable. Sorry, guys, if you ever see this video. I'm sure you're perfectly nice gentlemen, but no. The next time they ask you to do it, just say, nah, you're all right, thanks. I'll watch from the side. Jesus Christ. Give me strength. They then went on to upset everyone who'd ever played Command and Conquer. Because, like, apparently the whole gaming verse have been asking them for a new Command and Conquer game for about 20 years. And then they punted it on stage for about 15 minutes of a new mobile game called Command and Conquer. And why are you punting a mobile game at a massive conference? There is just no understanding as to why. Honestly, there was bits of it that felt like they really needed to fill space. It was like, don't. Just make it 10, 15 minutes shorter and don't worry about it. You could have told us that you had a new mobile Command and Conquer for people, you know, as a by the by. It didn't have to have two guys, again, I didn't know who they were, coming on and playing against each other. And yeah, I mean, it looked like a fun enough game to play on your phone, but it doesn't need to be at a conference. So they did that, and there was like everyone just going, what? Just if you're not going to give us a proper Command and Conquer game, just leave it, is what people were saying. I personally never played Command and Conquer, so I don't really care. And then we went on to a... I tell you, actually, let me just rewind slightly. The name of that game about loneliness is called Sea of Solitude. I don't think I said what it was. And it's coming out in early 2019. So it's not that far off. And, well, they're calling it SOS, but Sea of Solitude. It's a nice word, nice play on the title, the way that they've named it, and you've got the SOS thing in there as well. The Jedi, yeah, I think I mentioned that Jedi Fallen Order, that's holiday 2019. Unravel 2 was launched on the stage. FIFA 18, to be fair, they did say they're giving away, firstly, it's on sale, FIFA 18. Secondly, you can get a free patch for it now, which gives you the World Cup tournament for the World Cup starting. This is soccer, people, in America. So yeah, so the World Cup, so I think that's brilliant. Like, they're no longer are they punting as a separate football game. You can just get a football tournament built into the FIFA 18 that you've already bought, and I think that's great. I think to have to go out and buy a separate World Cup game is just crazy. Like, you know, like, but it's been going on for years. So for them to actually throw that in with FIFA 18 on the stage while they were punting FIFA 19 for the following year, which is out, I think, usually in October, November, isn't it? So that was quite a nice touch. That was quite nice of them. All right, and then they finished things off with a panel with Andrea Renee and you know, asking questions to this panel of three people, one of which was the executive producer of the game, I think, a writer, and another chap, but I forget what their actual titles. One of them was a writer anyway, and one of them was in charge. So it was actually quite a nice way of doing it with Anthem, because people had a lot of questions. We didn't get all the answers we wanted, but they did kind of spell out a little bit more than... I think my impression of this game, from the minute I saw it, was this is Destiny third person, and hopefully better, because it's just not... There's not enough in the Destiny world that keeps me interested. I've fallen out of love with Destiny now. You know, I love the gameplay, I always have, but there just isn't anything in that world that keeps me there and keeps me interested for long enough. The minute you've done stuff, you're just doing it over and over and over again until the next download. It's like, you know, and if you're not good at raids, you find it hard to get good teams together that can, you know, I mean, there is some help out there. There's some nice gamers out there that will take you on a run, but it's all just sort of, it's beyond most people as to what the hell, you know, you're meant to be doing half the time. So, I mean, for me, the best thing that Destiny ever did was the Taken King. And it was the game that I always thought we should have had in the first place. And so before the Taken King, it was kind of the best action experience, but the worst sort of world experience. The Taken King came along and kind of gave me a, you know, a fairly great experience. And then, but it was still repetitive, but it was a fairly great experience. And then after that, it just got pointless again. It was like you're doing the same shit you did before, you know, Taken King came out, and then the Destiny 2 came out, and then the story was just so generic and not interesting whatsoever, and they didn't give you any new baddies. They didn't. It was just like, you know, it was just, again, it was like, how can you be getting this wrong still when you've had so long to work on this game? Like, you know what I mean? It's just crazy. I mean, you can see they're spending so much time on it, but it's like it's not that hard to make a world interesting. It can't be that hard. I could sit in 2 evenings and come up with some really great stuff that you could put in a game that I would want to do. But I don't understand it. I don't understand why it's so difficult. But, you know, what do I know, people? I'm just a grunt. It's easy to criticise, you know. I mean, I love them for the action itself. I mean, it's brilliant. I adore running around with their weapons and shooting stuff, and, you know, it is. But it's just the world. Like, just make it interesting on a regular basis. And that's what Anthem seems to be trying to promise us. They also were, in the panel, they were very clear to say it's not an MMO. it's somewhere between an MMO and a single player game, effectively. So they're trying to give you your story with the ability to multiplayer play. So they said that the choices you make in the world when you're out and about there fighting with your friends or on your own, it's fine. They said you can play it single player if you really want to. It is more difficult if you've not got people with you, but it is, you know, it is playable. They're trying to balance it that way. And there are consequences to your choices, and that's driven when you go back to the central hub of the city. That's your central hub in your city, and that story's driven from there. So it's not like Destiny where you go back to this central place with everyone else wandering about and it's just a generic place to hand stuff in. That's where it drives your story for your character. So I'm really interested to see what they do here, because MMO's always had that missing for me. Like, you do end up just running around, beating the shit out of things, leveling up, getting a better weapon, and I don't feel like I've ever in any MMO connected to a character at all. So if they can give us that experience with Titanfall, with Anthem, we're still not sure what Anthem is. They keep talking about Anthem, and we assume it's a bit like Light, a bit like the Power, this thing, but it's they were saying that it's this world that's caught in chaos because the gods have left and left all this stuff behind, and this sort of constant storms and things happening to the world, these creatures appearing. It's all because of what the gods have left behind and all this sort of stuff. And you can only survive out there in this world inside your exosuit, which is called a javelin. There was 4 different types. There was sort of the massive hulky one. There was sort of an electric type one. There was a sort of speedy one. I can't remember the exact names. I'll try and have all this up behind me while I'm talking. And the footage again looked fantastic. They showed us going on a mission. It does look very like, you know, let's look around, let's hunt, let's fight stuff, eventually end up at a big monster. The monster looked great when it came down at the end. So, you know, we'll see how much they can mix up those missions as we get into it and we start seeing the teeth of the game, really, the meat and bones of it. But I think there's a lot of, you know, people already going, oh, it's not for me, and it's like, yeah, I wouldn't like, just because it is still got a hard co-op element to it, I wouldn't write it off just yet, because they are being very specific about the fact that it's your character's story. It's not an MMO. They said that on stage, so this isn't an MMO. It's something between that and a single player. So, and the guy said, you know, we have built it so you can play it on your own. We hope people will try the co-op because we've built it for that in mind, but it is absolutely playable as a single player game, and it's your character's story, and irrelevant of which way you do it. So it'd be really interesting to see just how it pans out. Yeah, they've obviously put a lot of thought into it from what they were saying on stage. Obviously, I'm not going to have the sound up behind. I'm not going to have that panel thing here. You know, if you want to go and watch, just search for it, Anthem panel with Andrea Rene or whatever, and you'll find it on YouTube, I'm sure. Or you can just look for the EA conference itself. But I'm always reluctant to I could find that and lop it out and stick it in here, but I'm always reluctant about doing that because I'm not sure what sort of I'm not sure what the rules are with regards to that on YouTube and stuff, with regards to somebody else's property. I don't know, people, so I'll be reluctant to stick it in the vlog. So there you are. So, I mean, they showed more footage of it. They showed more... the beginning of the footage was kind of what we've seen. It was like a major clip type thing, and I was like, we're not going to see much of this. Then it stopped, and I thought, oh, Christ, is that it? And then she brought the panel on, and it was like, great, we're going to see more of it. And they did show us some customization stuff going on as well, colouring the suit in. We saw them colouring it in, but I'm pretty sure we didn't see anything to do with sort of adding weapon things or, you know, all that sort of stuff. So we've yet to see just how in-depth that is. Because in the first clip we ever saw, not in this, but a while back, you were picking up, you know, it was dropping items, and it was like, oh, I've just got the thingy gun, and, oh, you know. So it'll be interesting to see how you can develop the suit, what you can plug into it, make it better, or, you know. So we didn't see any of that, but they did say it's going to be highly customizable. So hopefully that's just not a vision, you know, a sort of vision thing. It will be a sort of function thing as well. And he did say there will be purchasing in the game, but you will know what it is you're purchasing. It won't be like a loot box or something where you don't know what you're going to get. He said, and also it won't be things you can buy that enhance the gameplay. It'll only be cosmetics. It'll only be things that look better. or in some cases a lot worse. Some of the stuff you can buy in these games, bloody awful. So there you are. So yeah, so there won't be any, you can't buy to win in the game. You're literally only buying cosmetics, which is fine. I don't mind stuff like that. I mean, devs have to make their money back as best they can without taking the mick, you know, and I think they're getting a clear message from communities that they're not happy when they start sticking loot boxes in that give people an advantage in game, or you've no idea what's going to come out of it when you've paid for it and all this sort of stuff. Battlefront got absolutely hammered for it, Battlefront 2. So they've learnt their lesson there. The guy right at the very end of the conference, the head of EA, or I'm forgetting his name, but he did come out and say, look, we're trying really hard to listen to what you're saying. And he actually, it did feel fairly heartfelt that they wanted to change their ways a bit and start building games that the communities are going to connect with them on. Because I think even EA are starting to feel it. I mean, that was a massive backlash with Battlefront 2. I think they really got stung. I mean, I know a lot of people that were like, never buying that game. They were actually quite keen to try it. And it was like, nah, point of principle, not happening. I think they've fixed it now. I think they took it all out, didn't they? So there you are. So it was actually a half decent thing. I can always do without the sports stuff, to be honest with you. And I think even they struggle to give you something to talk about, or give themselves something to talk about when they come on stage with the sports stuff half the time, which is why you end up with the god-awful 5 minutes of some guy that won an e-sport competition. But, I mean, just to hear about the Star Wars game and to see more of Anthem, to hear about that SOS game. And if you're into Unravel, then you're going to... I mean, Unravel 2 looked gorgeous, you know. So if you're into Unravel, Unravel 2 is right up your street and it's out now. So for those things alone, it was certainly worth seeing. There was a lot of things, obviously, I'd like to have seen. I don't know, maybe a Dead Space remastered collection or a Dead Space new game, even though Visceral's now gone. They could have given us somebody could be remastering those, absolutely. I mean, I know you can go back compat with them and play them on the Xbox, but they're missing a massive opportunity there. They would sell loads of those Dead Space games if they just remastered them. Just give it to an outsourced company that's renowned for doing that very job and just, you know, push them out there. I don't know why I mean, even Mass Effect. Again, available on back compat, but I mean, that's a massive missed opportunity, especially when there was a massive failing on the Andromeda. It just didn't happen, did it? I mean, it just didn't, that game just didn't rock anyone's world. And if you released the trilogy remastered to a decent level, I think the fans would love you for it. Dead Space and Mass Effect done, remastered, until you get to a point where you want to give us a new one of any of those. We're happy to play them again with a new set of trophies. So I was a little bit disappointed not to see any of that. I think Dragon Age 4, would it be? Inquisition was the third one, wasn't it? Dragon Age 4, or whatever they're going to call it. It wasn't 3, was it? It was Inquisition. So whatever they call the next one, quite clearly is heavily in development. But there is they don't want to talk about any of that until Anthem's got its big push. Anthem is out on the 22nd of February 2019, so it's very, very close. It was pushed back. It was supposed to be in fall, wasn't it, of this year, I think. So they've pushed it back. That's fine. Push it back if you need to. Better a late game than a broke game. I think we're frustrating though it is. And there you are. So that was it. That was EA's conference. I'll have thrown up as much footage as I can find behind me, as I say. Hopefully that's given people who've not had a chance to look into it yet something to update them on what happened. As I say, I think we've got about an hour and a half before the Microsoft conference kicks off, so I shall be watching that. I'm very, very stoked about the Microsoft one, and I hope I'm not disappointed, because they need to deliver software now. So I'm hoping they've got some big announcements coming up. I don't even mind at this point if it's a good Halo that people really want to get the teeth stuck into. The last Halo was visually impressive, but I think it upset a lot of people with the fact you weren't Master Chief half the time. Even Gears 5 would be something that people could get excited about. So I know they're not new, but you could talk about those. That we know it's been leaked anyway, or they've said that, I can't remember if it's just a leak, but there is another Fable being made, not by Lionhead because they shut it down. I think is it the Forza team that are making it? One of their studios is making it anyway. So there is another story Fable on the way, which will be awesome to see. But Fable was never a massive seller. You know, I think like Fable 3 might have sold, you know, a couple of million copies in its lifetime or something like that. I don't think it was, and that sounds like a lot, but in the world of games, it's not a huge amount. So I think that was always the problem with Fable. I think it was always beloved by those who did play it, but it never grabbed enough people's attention to get properly stuck into it. So it's a shame, really, because it is a wonderful world, and it's such a quirky world as well. And I hope that quirkiness isn't lost from the fact that it's not Lionhead making it. But to be fair, I don't know how many people from Lionhead were still there by the time they made the third one. You know, it could have been a completely different team at that point. Because the main guy, Molyneux, wasn't there anymore, was he? I think after the... I'm not even sure. Was he involved in the second one? I think he was. But he certainly wasn't involved in the third one, I don't think. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they come up with. I'm really stoked to see. I'm hoping it's not a massive letdown. They've already put Crackdown back again, which I don't think is going to rock much people's worlds anyway. I don't think it. I think it'll be a fun game for multiplayer people who want to play multiplayer, but I don't think it's going to be. It's not going to be a massive title like a Last of Us or a God of War, or, you know, it is what it is, Crackdown. I don't think it's going to... I think there's some people that are excited for the multiplayer session of it, but I don't think... Didn't bother me that it was put back. But the very fact it's been put back so many times is kind of concerning for that game anyway. So, yeah, so let's see what they bring us. Let's hope we're not disappointed. It could well be that they've already resigned themselves to the fact that they're going to try and push third-party stuff as heavily as possible, maybe try and get some third-party stuff early before PlayStation do, to push themselves through this next couple of years before we're looking at PS5s and Xbox 2s or whatever they decide to call it. You know, because the Xbox One X is a fantastic machine. I mean, it is by far the best machine I have, much as though the PlayStation 4 Pro is where I've got most of my gaming. Obviously, it came before the X. The X is... I love going on the X. It's a beautiful machine to play. The games play gorgeously on it. It always feels you've got that power push on it. Really, really nice bit of kit. So, you know, hopefully they'll have something to bring to it to make us excited, people. So there you are. It has been an honour and a privilege bringing this E3 EA vlog to you today, and I shall be back with a Microsoft One and a PlayStation 1 not so long away. See you later, folks. Bye.